Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast of the home game. Early kick-off on Saturday, a game against Southampton, the team that are favourites, or certainly one of the favourites, to win the Championship, relegated from the Premier League last season. And it did end in a 5-0 win for Sunderland, which I don't think anyone saw that coming. So as always, we'll get into what happened, who scored, the goals, and of course, a little bit about the players that have come in as well since the last podcast, albeit there will be another podcast out in the future to talk deeply about all of that. But on the game itself, John, any result out of that game would probably have been seen as a good one. Never mind a 5-0 win.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it now, and it is a fantastic result. Maybe one that's needed after maybe the sort of turbulent few days we've had, and maybe they're not as turbulent as maybe we thought they are, and people sticking, their opinions out, and it does, it does catch a hold on Twitter and those types of things. But to me, that performance showed that half the stuff, or maybe most of the stuff that I read, probably wasn't true. And you're coming up against a very, very good team. Can we set up to play against them? I wouldn't have said worried, going into the game, because I thought, us at home, we're still decent, even though we haven't got the best of records. But to be fair to the coaching staff and the team, absolutely spot on. From the first minute, an early goal does help. And a second goal certainly helps. A quick one, and that sort of kills them. And they sort of played their game. Southampton, from start to finish, didn't really change anything, and we totally had them. And like I say, with the we'll call it a week, with the week we've had, with he going, they're not going, this could go, and all that type of thing. The best thing I think that you can do is, and I think we're all relieved to get back to the football and it be good football. We've got so many exciting players. We've got a lot of injuries, but the squad we put out today, for me, it was fantastic from everyone, and they all played the part.
And obviously, with that win, Michael, it's I think it's very similar, if not identical, start to the season that we had last year as well in terms of points return. Certainly similar, like I say, if not the same. But this was one of the games that probably suited Sunderland. I think, again, we've said this the entirety of last season against teams like Burnley and albeit Sheffield United didn't get any results against. But games like this do suit Sunderland where, they're not necessarily going to have, 80% of possession. I think we ended up with about 35 in the game.
32 to be precise, but
yeah,
there you go.
Even less. Which I think is probably the lowest we've had in any game this season. I'd be surprised if not. But what that means is, it means that Southampton, step up more, they leave more gaps in behind, they put more players forward because obviously they're expected to win. And when you've got players like obviously Pritchard, who came off the bench, Bradley Dack, Abdullah Bar, who had a good game, that's when players like that can be utilised to the fullest.
The thing is, you're exactly right, because the thing is, I mean, if you want to look at the two of the games this year, you look at someone like the Ipswich game and the Southampton home games, they're chalk and cheese in terms of styles, where Ipswich basically came up, and although obviously they aren't a bad side, they most of the game they were sat in their own half, at least in the first half, and the onus was on Sunderland to try and break them down, and that's quite different. We've had to, it's not just this season, we've struggled against that. We often struggle more against teams that come and sit and put 10 men behind the ball, and it sometimes leads to frustrations, especially if you make a silly mistake, give the goal away, and then all of a sudden you're really facing an uphill battle to break a team down. But with a team like Southampton, as you've said, they're expected to be up there challenging near the top. I still think they'll be up there in the top. If I'm going to go say, I still think that they'll get better as the season goes on. I think they should still at least be in the playoffs, if not the top two. But the point is, Southampton were not going to come up here to just sit back. They were going to come here to have a go. And providing Sunderland were able to stand up to that and not give away any goals, which obviously is easier said than done against the Southampton team, because that Southampton team, regardless of who they've lost, still has quality for this league. Then it meant that we could switch and transition very quickly, and we were able to go from back to front very quickly. Evidenced by, for example, I promise I don't keep doing this on purpose to segue into points you're probably going to make, but like the first goal, when we give the ball away from kickoff, Southampton have a couple of early opportunities, or half opportunities anyway, and then we do one long ball forward to Bar on the left-hand side, keep the ball, and then it basically leads to the goal with a passage of play. But the point is, we broke quickly because Southampton were pushing forward, And these sort of games, you are right, do suit Sunderland. I mean, and as John said, I mean, the result in general was just staggering. Like, it even got to the point where a couple of the goals, like the third and fourth ones, I didn't celebrate them just because not because I was unhappy, but because I was just genuinely stunned. Yeah. Like I was so happy, I was stunned as to what I was watching live in front of me. But yes, I mean, that you're right though. The games like this suit Sunderland, and it's definitely helpful that Southampton push forward. And obviously once you get in front as well, then it means they've got to push forward even more, which leaves more gaps for you, which is what ended up happening across the game.
Yeah. No, so the first goal is in the 52nd second.
I was going to say,
that's a weird way of saying it, isn't it? 52nd second. No, yeah, that is the right way of saying it, isn't it?
Yeah,
right. It just doesn't sound right at all, does it? And that's Jack Clark that gets it. Soon after, I think this is in the 7th minute, Pierre Ekwa makes it 2-0, John. Both goals, which I was fortunate enough to not see because of reasons unknown at this stage. But a very good start, and I think that's what Sunderland needed to do against a team like Southampton, and it's going to be similar in the games when we play Leeds, Leicester, and other teams that I expect to be at the top, because the longer Southampton are in a game like this, the more it probably favours them, because what they do is tire opposition out. They have a game plan to stick to it. They have a lot of possession, and eventually that will catch up to you. So to go 2-0 up after 7 minutes is exactly what Sunderland needed, really.
Yeah, it was the perfect start. We're reactionary to obviously giving the ball away, and then it is a fantastic goal if we did break it down, and it sets the tone. We can maybe settle in a bit and think, right, keep it tight, let them do their. They weren't very progressive passes. They were sort of they had a lot of passes, and I've seen the stats, for their season, and it's very sort of slow back passing. So we're like you say, I think we're a very, very good team to sort of, we'll just wait, because we know when we have got the chances, bar them minimal. Because I think we were the best in the league last season for chances created when we had the ball, instead of having lots of it and maybe not creating as much. So Ekwa getting the second goal, again, that puts them back a little bit, and you're thinking, are they going to react? Are they going to change? And they didn't. And it probably wasn't until, I'd say, even when Dak scored, I was thinking, but Southampton is surely, going to get 1 or 2 goals back. I wasn't 100% confident. Obviously, we know as Sunderland fans, it doesn't work like that. They had their little spells, but I thought on the whole, I thought we dealt with them, properly and professionally. You've got to take your hat off to the coaching staff. I think Mowbray mentioned it in his post match, saying, Dodson, Proctor, that they sort of come up with the game plan. And it was perfection, absolutely. But I could point out every single player doing something brilliant. We've had a few players who we know 09's under pressure because of Bath leaving, and he's the centre back now. And as Trey Hume started, as well as like yesterday was fantastic. Abdullah Bar, you're sort of thinking, well, he's on the wing, probably his best game in a Sunderland shirt. It really worked for Dak. I thought Bellingham was fantastic. We could go for all of them, and even the players coming on and fitting into a good system. It was perfection from start to finish for me, as any game could go. I think the only thing I got worried about is when someone stamped on Dan Ballard. My sort of heart was in my mouth. But when teams come to the stadium and you can hit them hard and hit them quick, and you get, we'll say, get the fans on side, if you see what I mean, and get it bouncing, is very, very hard to then come back. And maybe, even though we're a young team, sorry to obviously go on, but now we're a young team. Mowbray did say, obviously we've been here last season when we were 2-0 up at half time with Burnley. Second half, we got absolutely murdered by a fantastic team. Southampton are a very, very good team, but it's nice to see us draw on that experience, even though we're still young. And then obviously second half, we put that into fruition, and to be fair, smashed them second half as well. So,
And obviously that's probably the first game really this season where Sunderland have got the result that they deserved to get. Because you look at some of the results, since the start of the season, the Ipswich result, Preston result, the performance is probably better than the result suggested. This is the first game where the performance certainly matched the result, and I think Clark said it in the interview as well. Everything just clicked, and we'll kind of get on to the goals in the second half as well. But as a collective, the goals that we scored against Southampton are goals that we hadn't really scored all season. So many times we came on the podcast and talked about how poor the crossing was. Well, 2 of our goals against Southampton led to crosses. Came from crosses. The first one from Hume, which is a very good cross. 2 of them come from Ekwa having a shot from long range, which again, after podcast against Preston, Ipswich, whoever it was, we were saying, why don't we just shoot more often? Have a shot from outside the box when the chance arises. We did that. We scored 2 goals from that. And the 5 goals are from things that we've been largely quite poor at since the start of the season.
Well, even if you touch on the crosses point, like if you look at the 4th goal, because funnily enough, I've had the game recorded and I was just watching it back as you were talking, and the 4th goal has originated in some ways from a cross. It was a cross from Sirkin, which, I know you want to touch on it later, but it's basically a cross from Sirkin, which Dak headers at the keeper and Banzunu, I think is how you pronounce his name. And then basically the little bit of play after that results in the goal. But yeah, you're right. So 3 of the goals involve crosses. And then I think it was the second and third one shoot from distance. And I'm not usually a big fan of us shooting from distance, but that's probably more than likely because we're not very good at it on the whole. But yes, I think it was I think it was you said that Jack Clark said things just clicked. They just worked. And although across the previous 4 games, if you were to quickly touch on each of them, Preston and Ipswich deserved at least a point. Preston, in my opinion, definitely deserved a win, but obviously we didn't get it. Rotherham, I think, was still our weakest performance, but we still played. We did enough to win the game, I think. And then Coventry, look, again, from an attacking point of view, that was probably our worst performance, but defensively, we made up for it. But yes, this was the first game where Sunderland, and I think you'll agree with this, Sunderland got the rub of the green for once. Where if you look at Ipswich, if you look at the goals we conceded prior to, the goals we conceded, we haven't conceded in the last 2 games, which is another important thing. But the goals we conceded, 4 of them have come from a result of a deflection or some sort. And that sort of thing is not sustainable. And even at the time we said that sort of thing will not usually happen regularly across a season unless something very freakish happens. But yesterday, the second goal, there was an element of a deflection into it. But at the end of the day, we earned that luck. We deserved it. And we've deserved it across the 4 games prior to this. So I think we've done exceptionally. And like John said, just to quickly add on to something that John said and you both said before, if you get the place bouncing early on, the Stadium of Light should be a very, very intimidating place for people to come to. Because again, Southampton were shell-shocked by the opening, 10, 15 minutes? And they didn't know how, and that's the situation they weren't in before. I know they went behind against Norwich, I think, in the 4-4 they had, but they were never really 2 goals out of it or anything. They were never really out of the game. That's something they weren't used to, and they were shell-shocked. And we've got a young, energetic side with pace and with intensity and just all around really good gameplay. So that would be very hard to defend. But to answer your question, yes, things just worked for us for once. We're finally overdue it, I'd say.
Yeah. And just quickly on the 5th goal, which, I think the game was already dead and buried by then, John, but Bennett came on, Rigg came on. I think that's his first championship appearance, I think. Could be wrong on that.
I think so.
I think it's his first championship. Played in the League Cup, obviously scored in the League Cup in the defeat that we had on penalties against Crewe. I think he scored another game as well, did he? Or did he not? I know he had a goal disallowed against Fulham last season. But either way,
it was disallowed, yes.
It's definitely his first goal in the championship. And again, it comes from another cross. We get the first ball. Rigg wins the header. But, I don't really know what Bennett was doing in the build-up to the goal. But it looked good. The first 2 roulettes that you do, there's a point to it. He beat the player. He beat the second player. The third roulette was a bit random, but it worked.
Yeah, we'll take it all day long. I think Russell Martin, it was nice to see his little interview at the end saying they just didn't match our desire, and that's desire from him. Because if I'm the Southampton player, I'm probably going to snap Jewis and Bennett in half there. But they didn't really seem to get near him, and that's a boy who's frustrated because obviously he hasn't played as much as he would have liked. He was talking of him going on loan, but thank God we did keep him, to be fair. But who then wants to go on and prove, and obviously we know he's played today against the Man United under 21s and got us a draw there. There is a player there, and I think he's maybe been a bit unlucky, obviously, with the striker situation, because the times when we used to bring him on, He'd get a cross in, and we'd already taken Ross Stewart off, and he'd be our only striker at that time. So he is getting crosses in. So if they are working on those types of things, which they are, he doesn't really hesitate to think, well, I'll just go and get it in the box. And an excellent cross. And finally, we're actually flooding the box. There was countless times yesterday we flooded the box, and you want, we've all seen it. A 16-year-old playing sort of like, what a 25-year-old would, know where to be, and he's quite small by the looks of him, and it's a fantastic. I see people who would sort of shirk that header, but to go up and you can see, I think in his eyes, you can already see he knows he's going to score. Again, it's that desire to go and win the ball. And we could probably question the goalkeeper was, sort of a bit weak-handed, but unfortunately, you take it. And it was, I think we deserved it as a team. For the fifth one to go, and I think Hemir should have probably scored. We probably had a couple of other opportunities. Jack Clark probably unlucky to get more. So it was nice to sort of round it off and maybe just reset the atmosphere in the stadium. Sort of a refresher of this was a good day, a good result for everybody, and good for Rig as well. He didn't know what to do. He did sort of 4 celebrations, and and absolutely loved it. And that's what you want to see. He's, by all accounts, he's a Newcastle fan, and if you watch today, you probably wouldn't have said he is, judging by what he did and what his celebration was. So, we've got an absolute gem there, and by all accounts, we turned down a £3 million bid from Man United for him. So, yeah, you're gonna have to add a few zeros on there, mate. Unfortunately,
you are. And obviously, that game against Southampton's not the only thing that happened in the last few days, Mike. And like I say, we'll do a podcast actually talking specifically about it. But with the international break now, which comes at a bad time and a good time. A bad time because you're on the back of 2 clean sheets, a massive win against one of the league favourites. You're going to want to keep that momentum. But a good time because the players that have come in now have 2 weeks to settle in, train with the players, train with the squad, kind of get an understanding as to what they're going to be asked to do when they do play. And of course, a little bit more time for the likes of Elise. Trying to think of who else was injured. Obviously, Roberts, Mayenda. Obviously, with Tete and stuff is still a little bit far out. But the 2 weeks that they have to get up to speed, get the match fitness, and get used to playing with the squad, the likes of Wuchiche, who I think that's how you say his name. Rusin, who came in, I think he's waiting for his visa. He should hopefully come soon. And obviously Pembele as well. It's going to be interesting to see how they fit into the team after the international break, and kind of what changes, because I think QPR is the game after this break. You're going to have 6 or 7 players, fit, ready to come back into the squad off the back of a 5-0 win against Southampton.
Well, exactly. But I mean, at the same time, it's a funny one because it's a conundrum of whether you change the team to get a striker into it, or this team's just helped beat Southampton 5-0. And although we definitely, like John said earlier, deserved the result, absolutely, against Southampton, across the course of the season, it's not sustainable to play like that without a strike. Well, to score 5.
I think it's going to depend on the game as well, because I think with Southampton, dominating possession, having someone like Dak to play up front to link stuff is going to be the difference. But against QPR, who I think they've slightly improved, it is, and they're probably going to sit deep. They're going to let us have the ball. Having a striker in there just to, whether it's Burst or whether it's Rusin, whether it's Mayenda or Hamia and whoever else, we've got that many of them now, to get a good ball in the box, and it can cause problems. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see who starts, who's in the squad, and if there is changes, who misses out.
Well, again, it's every game's different. Every game's got its own set of requirements, and we've got to remember as well. I mean, the next 3 games, I think, we're all within 8 days of each other, aren't they? That you're QPR at the weekend, then you got Blackburn, I think, on the Wednesday night. I think that's correct. And then we've got the Cardiff game, I think, on the following Sunday. So, these players are going to get minutes. But in certain, the game like QPR, you've just alluded to it there. Like, if we play with a striker up top, sometimes because they're going to be compact and hard to break down. So if that's the case, if you have a striker to pull one of the defenders out of shape, then it leaves space for, say, Clark or Roberts if he comes back, or Barr if he's still playing, or Dak or Bellingham. It can cause a lot of problems for a lot of opposition players. But at the same time, this is the type of conundrum you want to be having, because this team's just beaten Southampton 5-0. And when you talk about confidence, a lot of football is about confidence. And the fact of the matter is, if this isn't going to give us confidence, then I'm baffled as to what will give us confidence going forward. And as well for the new players coming in, it just gives them 2 weeks to settle into the area, because obviously we were pretty busy on deadline day, and we got 4 players in who are all, with the exception of Burstow from Chelsea, are from abroad. So in that sense, you want to make sure that they've got time to just settle into the area a little bit. So yeah, I do get what your point. That obviously you want to keep momentum, but I think for me personally, this comes at a good time, because we're going to it on, and also it might make it a happier camp as well, because I can't imagine the atmosphere at the training ground would have been the best over the last couple of days of the window with what was going on. But this result, I think, will just calm both us fans and players and everybody down, and just go, right, that's it. Like you guys said earlier, I think it was John who said it. It's about the football now. Train, get settled into the area, move on to the games coming up, and we'll see where it takes us from there.
Yeah. 3 players that stood out, John. Go.
I've got to go with Dan Ballard. I thought he was excellent yesterday. Very, very good. I'll probably go Jack Clark as well. A lot of criticism saying he's unhappy and blah, 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 blah. But
he didn't look at yesterday, mine, did he?
Nah, always wanted the ball. Didn't always come off. But I thought, to be fair, he's probably the player that Southampton were missing. Just bringing the ball up, and was fantastic. Was doing his defensive side as well. And the third one, I'd probably go for. I'll go for Jewison Bennett, just for coming on and sort of making a difference. It could have been a lot of them, to be fair. So it was a very much a whole team performance. But yeah, very, very good day.
What's Michael for you?
John's nicked 2 of my options. Okay, for the sake of being different, I'll go 3 different players, one of which he hasn't mentioned. If you want it in no particular order, obviously Pierre Ekwa's got to be one of them. I think a lot of the time he ran the show in midfield, and there was one occasion, I think, where he was messing around with the ball in the first half that he lost it. But other than that, I don't think he did much wrong, if anything. I thought he just ran things in midfield. Second, I think quite underrated shout is Dan Neil. I think Dan Neil was, again, like with Pierre Ekwa, was all about the pitch, was positionally very good across the game, helped break things up as well. And obviously Dan Ballard, all of John's options are well worth a shout. But a third option that I'm probably going to go with, I think is, I'm going to go with one of the fullbacks, but I don't know which one to go for.
I think I would have to chuck Luke O'Nine in there just for deliberately kicking the ball off Shea Adams after he got booked for doing the exact same thing in the first half.
That was quite funny, yes. That was actually quite funny. I'll tell you what then, I'm going to go with... screw it. I'm going to go with Luke O'Nine just for that. Let's have a bit of a banter moment in there. But seriously, yeah, Luke O'Nine was going to have the game of his life, because they had Adam Armstrong in the first half, Stuart Armstrong on in there as well, and they had Che Adams and Ryan Fraser coming off the bench for the second half. And I think along with Dan Ballard, he marshalled everyone brilliantly, and Southampton had a couple of chances, but we mostly kept them at bay surprisingly comfortably. So to me, 3 options: Luke O'Nine, Pierre Ekwa, and Dan Neil. But again, you couldn't think of anyone who had a bad game.
Yeah. Well, 2-week break, national break, and that's here we'll have a podcast out to talk about, the transfer window, incomings, outgoings, all of that stuff. But the next game is QPR away, John. And like I said, although QPR allegedly have improved the way they play this season, I'm sure we'll see about that one. It's going to be a completely different game to Southampton. It's going to be a game that Sunderland no doubt dominate possession, dominate the ball, and have to find a way to break QPR down, which I presume is going to be how the game goes. We don't know who's going to play. We don't know if anyone's going to be changed in the squad. A lot of things could happen between now and then. But if you had to go with an early prediction for the game, it would be
2-0 win. I think our record's quite good down there. I think last time we played, didn't Patterson save a penalty, and we I think we battered them, to be fair. So I'd expect something along those lines. Again, I'll take any win at the end of the day, and the clean sheets are coming now. So if we can again,
don't get me started, John.
Now if we can build on those, which we've got 2. Out of 2 very, very good attacking. I think Coventry scored loads of goals yesterday. We've done really well. And Southampton scored 4, I think, last weekend. So, we can only build on that. And if we do that, we know we've got the talent up front. So, yeah, I'll take any win, but I'll go 2-0. Roosson and Semedo. There you go. Random.
Very random. Michael.
I hope John's right, because I'm going down to it, actually. right, okay, it's not necessarily what I think, but since I've started doing reverse psychology and I've been predicting us not to win, we've been winning games. So I'll go 1-1, but it's not. But what I actually think, but it's not necessarily what I think. I do think we'll win 3-1. I think if we, like you said, if we can manage QPR's side of the game, because it is going to be a different type of game. But I think as well, it'll be key, like with Southampton, for different reasons that we need to get the first goal. I think if you score first, then I could see us scoring a couple past them, because then they have to come out. If they score first, then it's not going to be a very pretty watch, put it that way. So I'll go 1-1 just for the sake of reverse psychology, but obviously it's not really what I think.
Yeah, that's fine. But like I say, that's 2 weeks' time. We'll have a podcast out during the break to discuss the transfer window, discuss the incomings, outgoings. But until then, we'll see you later.
That's all, folks.